Joseph C. Pierce said, to live a creative life, we must first lose our fear of being wrong. I don't think it's any secret that we were born to create and be creative beings. I think it's safe to assume that artistic people tend to express themselves through anything but direct verbalization. I say that because it's true to myself. If you know anything about me, I am a very quiet person and I'm very bad with words. But you would also know that art and music are my passions. To me, there's nothing more freeing than sitting down with a pencil and a piece of paper in front of me and just drawing for hours upon hours. When 5 hours feels like 5 minutes and a piece of my heart has been created on the sheet in front of me. Or when I'm strumming a guitar or ukulele so hard and so passionately that my fingers physically start to ache and my calluses burn. To me, that is the most free that I can possibly be. And so with this experience, I decided to further my mode of communication through art and music. Both, I wanted to grow in them equally, but in different ways. So being able to communicate has never really been an easy thing for me. I was a quiet kid, and I found it hard to get the thoughts in my head out through my mouth. Part of that is because I'm an introvert. It's just naturally hard for me. But I just genuinely found it hard to say what I was thinking. And so even now, I still get super tongue-tied and panicked when I speak for too long. But the arts have always helped me communicate. I've been drawing ever since I can remember, and music has always been a part of my family. It's just been a way that we've, as a family, have been able to communicate ourselves. So through art and music, I've been able to convey my thoughts through these alternative methods. But personally, music only helps when I can find a song that I relate to, and that's because I don't know music theory. So for my fall experience, I tried to further my mode of communication through music through learning music theory. So to make a long story short, I have taught myself 3 instruments throughout all of high school. I started playing piano when I was 6 and violin when I was in 3rd grade, piano when I was in 6th grade, different, and then violin when I was in 3rd grade. So when I started teaching myself guitar freshman year, I was excited that I got to teach myself something. I had piano lessons and violin lessons, but I was excited to take this one on and challenge myself in my own personal way. But I didn't challenge myself enough. I taught myself basic chords, learned bar chords, and then more complex strum patterns, but that was all I was really able to teach myself. And so, not really thinking that I needed anything more, I started to pick up the ukulele. Same thing happened. And then I picked up mandolin, and you can probably imagine where the story goes from there. Finally, after having these 3 instruments, I realized that I needed theory to further my musical ability. And so I started to look for ways to teach myself theory. I liked the independence that I had of being able to say, yeah, I taught myself this. And so I immediately kind of became lazy about it. And I was like, oh, but playing chords are so much easier than trying to figure out complex finger-picking patterns. And so instead of dragging my feet, instead of dragging my feet with the now 5 instruments that I know, I decided to use this project to do something that I've wanted to do for years. So for about 2 months in the fall, I set aside 2 hours every day to go and practice and go through a music theory workbook. I started with learning scales, because that's the basic necessity, I guess you could say. I learned 14 scales total, and I found it very tedious, but also very easy. Once I understood the basic pattern of a scale, it all just became very simple and very trivial to me. So about the 6-week mark, I started to kind of shrug it off and like, oh, I don't need to go practice today. I can just do it tomorrow, and it'll all be the same. But but that is when I learned perseverance and diligence. I had to make myself believe that learning scales was not a boring task, but it rather prepared me for my end goal of theory. It gave me a new perspective, and I was excited to learn more about music. I also realized that I'm not very diligent when it comes to even just everyday things like cleaning or doing homework that's not necessarily due the next day. And so through that whole experience, I learned perseverance, and I found that I use it constantly because I do get very anxious majority of the time. And so I found myself applying the same techniques that I told myself when I was playing piano of like, oh, you have an hour left. That's 15 minutes 4 times. You can get through 15 minutes 4 times. But I started to apply that to when I started to get anxious. And that was something that I didn't intend on this experience to affect me. And so I was excited to see these unintentional virtues grow in this next semester, whether I realized that I was actually growing in them or not. So I wanted to continue to learn theory, but unfortunately I was unable to because of my spring experience. But I do intend to continue to work on theory and open up that form of communication through music. So this leads me to this semester. I have decided to pursue a career in art therapy because I myself have seen the personal benefits. Dr. Karlie Norton is a psychologist, and she studies the relationship between hand use and current cultural habits. She found that hands-on work satisfies our fundamental need to make things. She says that the societal pressure of using advanced technology and our need to buy the things that we need instead of creating them has deprived us of the processes that provide joy, meaning, and pride. So basically, in a nutshell, making things promotes psychological well-being. Lambert found that as a result of creating, we lose self-consciousness and pass time in a contented state. And that is the psychological reason to why I love art, and why I find myself lost in it. When I find myself 5 hours later thinking that it's only been 5 minutes, it's because I psychologically have lost myself. So you can probably imagine how those facts, you can probably imagine how those, how art would have an impact on someone with a mental illness, like depression, anxiety, or even a schizophrenic. Those are my 3 areas of interest of mental illness that I want to go into for art therapy. I want to be able to experience, so for this experience, I wanted to be able to empathize with my future clients. I wanted to be able to understand what they were going through, because how can I ask someone to do something that I personally have not done? So for this experience, I did my own personal art therapy sessions. I gave myself prompts, and I sat down for an hour and a half every week in silence, and I just drew whatever came to me when I first read the prompt. And then I would journal about it and how that prompt affected me. And the product is unexplainably incredible. I have 2 drawings that I'm going to show you guys that have taught me more about myself than I ever thought that they would. So this one, I don't know if you guys can see it. I can turn off the lights if you want. Should I do that? Yeah, okay. So this prompt was draw your idea of freedom. Now I know you guys are probably like, oh yes, birds, they fly. That's freedom, right? That's not why I chose a bird. I didn't, because them being able to fly, that's way too cliche for me. That's not what it is. So as I started drawing, I was like, okay, well, why? What is it about birds that represent freedom to me? And so as I started to kind of unpack that, I realized personally, I've had a lot of chickens in my life, and I have ducks, and I've had parakeets and all these kind of birds. But then I realized that they're flightless, but they still represent freedom to me. And so I kind of was like hashing it out in my brain, and it's because birds are fragile. They're fragile beings. Like, the slightest thing can kill them, essentially. But undomesticated birds can take care of themselves. They don't need heat lamps or anything that will help them survive. There's a reason why birds aren't extinct, even though they're so insanely fragile. So despite being so fragile, they're independent, and they're able to take care of themselves, and that to me is freedom. This next one is by far my favorite that I've done. This prompt was create an expressive self-portrait. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Karlie, this isn't a self-portrait. Your face isn't on it. I did that intentionally. I felt as I was drawing, when I came to actually like getting the idea in my head out, I realized that I didn't know what facial expression to give myself. I didn't know what would have been an accurate representation of who I am. I couldn't draw myself smiling or frowning or even just having a blank stare because it wouldn't have been an accurate representation of who I am. So there's that. The next aspect of this drawing is that it's incredibly simplistic. If you guys have seen any of my other drawings, you know that this is completely out of my style. I draw the most complex things I possibly can. Realistic, beyond insane, hours upon hours, ridiculous things that I put myself through. And so I made this simplistic because I also thought it was an accurate representation of who I am. I strive to be as simplistic as I possibly can be. And the reason why is actually I figured out through the branches of this. The branches started out as kind of just a frame because I didn't know what to really do with it because I finished so early. I was like, I'll just doodle, I guess. But I ended up drawing these complex branches. And I found myself actually like starting to get lost in them when I was shading. I was like, wait, where does this line go? I don't know. Is this connected to anything? No, it's not. That's fine. And then I also realized that that is also an accurate representation of me. My brain looks like these branches majority of the time. My thoughts just crossfire constantly, and it's exhausting, actually. And my brain, it just never stops going. So I figured out that why I'm a simplistic person is because it is my escape from the complexity of my thoughts. And so that is why that is my expressive self-portrait, because I think it represents me more than I thought that just having a face would. And so, like I said, this prompt revealed more to me than I ever thought that it did. When it said create an expressive self-portrait, I was like, oh, this is going to take me ages because I have to make it realistic. But I didn't, and I got more out of it than I ever thought I would. So ever since I created a space to be creative constantly throughout the week, I noticed a big difference in myself. I feel lighter, physically and emotionally lighter, and I firmly believe that that is because I was lifted of the burden of being creative. Not saying that being creative is a burden, just that I fulfilled my need to create something. I go back to what I said earlier, quoting Lambert, when we are dissolved in a deeply absorbing task, we lose self-consciousness and pass time in a contented state. Losing myself was freeing. Losing myself in art was freeing to me. I felt like I had something to actually tangibly give the world. And even the simplest prompts gave me joy because I was exercising my hands-on ability to create something. So now you might be asking how I'm going to apply this little experience to actually the broad picture of art therapy. I did this to empathize with my future clients. I wanted to know what it was like to go through an art therapy session. I want it to be able to share in their joys when they make something to give the world through drawing, painting, or even sculpting. You guys probably understand why I want to go into depression and anxiety, but you're probably thinking, what on earth would possess a person to voluntarily go through the artistic process with a schizophrenic? I realized my interest in this mental illness after watching A Beautiful Mind, which is about a schizophrenic mathematician working on his doctorate. And he was able to solve just incredible math problems. And that was his thing. He wanted to solve problems. And so he ended up applying himself and just solving problems to help control his schizophrenia. And he ended up just doing crazy problem-solving things that helped control. So I thought, why wouldn't we do that with art? Why wouldn't that work with art? So after doing case study after case study, I realized that one-on-one art therapy was way more beneficial in many arenas. So a little bit about schizophrenia. It's a mental defect involving the genes. And so this one case study, he basically paired with the defect and the trauma caused severe schizophrenia. And art therapy was able to help him express himself in ways that words could not. The doctors learned more about him through art than they ever did before. And so I want to be able to do that. I want people to be able to come to me, and I will help them process their hurts and emotions through something other than words, because I personally have felt the impact of art in my life. So I have a verse that applies. It's 1 Timothy 4:14 through 15. It's, "Do not neglect the gift you have, which was given to you by prophecy when the council of elders laid their hands on you. Practice these things, immerse yourself in them, so that all may see your progress." I immersed myself in my passions, and I'm now living what I like to call a creative life. And I now understand what it looks like to live a creative life. So I go back to the quote that I originally started with. To live a creative life, we must lose our fear of being wrong. And I feel like I have a deeper understanding of what that looks like now. I no longer have a fear to be artistic, to the processes, and how I should be creating. So, my challenge to you is to attempt living a creative life. Challenge yourself to make something weekly or monthly, whatever it looks like, using your own passions and your own personal giftings. So to end, I say you can't really argue with psychology or myself when I say you will see a difference in yourself. Thank you.